Hey guys, Thomas Tom, and I'm here to review the movie Arctic Dogs. So, we begin this movie following some narration by our main white snow fox named Swifty, who we learn from his dialogue is that he is able to blend in, and from this we see that his narration he's depicting of wanting to stand out. And we see that there are these three male dogs, as in mailing things to other people. Duke, Dakota, and Dusty, who are these popular wolves that carry the mail to these other animals that live in the Arctic. And this helps out with the area. It creates boon, helps others, etc., etc. And he pretty early on bumps into this brown fox, the one to the right of him, as a young child. His name is Jamie, and she sort of has or sends or refers to him, and then they seem to talk. So this is the first time indicator of Swifty having been talked to or whatever. So you see that the dogs are doing their thing, and we cut to a montage of Swifty being able to make some friends, and then we cut to him having a job. So we skip ahead quite a few years here, and he's at the post office. And then it cuts to 3 more years later, as he has now worked there for 3 years. So he's prepping up to work, he's gaining weight, and he meets PB, Polar Bear, the one on the left of the poster there. And he's talking about how he wants to gain that pound in order to qualify, I guess, for this position, is that you need to weigh a certain amount of pounds or whatever. So PB, or Polar Bear, says that they're going to be late, so they sled down, and he talks about how he wants to date Jamie. He's interested in her, so they were childhood friends, now he's, wanting to be with her. So they actually end up passing her, and he's very excited to get to work, but he gets there a little bit late, and he doesn't get the promotion in the process of... So he has to do the same old job that he's been doing. And we see the 3 dogs that are there, and they're tired, and they're old, and they're, they still manage to put smiles on their faces and do their job. And we also see, at the same time, that Swifty is also tired of his current job. And we see that Jamie arrives with a package in hand. So Swifty says that he will deliver this said package. And so he goes off, and we see him deliver this package to a walrus with machine legs. Gets the package, and Swifty returns to Jamie, and they're talking about, and he's trying to find a way to ask her out, but he's too he keeps getting distracted, and she starts talking about her invention that she's building currently. So in the process, you're probably already wondering of why Jamie hasn't made this post office thing more efficient or anything like that. It doesn't matter, it's not relevant to the movie. But whatever. Anyway, so we can see pretty early on that Jamie is already kind of anticipating for Swifty to ask her out, but he kind of bails on that opportunity. and she sees, or he sees this little gift, this little toy gift that he fixed for her. And after doing this delivery, he gets suspended because he wasn't supposed to do it. So he gets suspended for trying to step up or whatever. I guess that's a thing that can happen in real work. I don't know. So we see very briefly that he's being spied on in the distance. Then we also see that the wolves that are out get knocked out, and they're taken out by these little bird-like creatures. I forget what they're called. Nonetheless, Swifty is also caught by being stacked into a suitcase, and when he gets out, he's met with these two otter characters who are talking to him about all of these weird things that are going on, and they hire him in quotes. I don't think they ever actually would. They actually end up paying him or whatever, because whatever, to do some sort of investigation, to go deep diving into this mysterious thing that is happening. So on his arrival back, he starts to demand his job back. He's really adamant about being the top dog at this point. So Jamie heads over, and once again, Swifty fails to ask Jamie out. He's very keen on moving on ahead with the things he's doing now. So he has the job opportunity to push the sled. He is given this opportunity, even though he was just put on suspension. So the polar bear gives him a little bit of a bump, so he's able to push the mail. And it's a montage from there of him delivering all the various packages. So we cut to the walrus guy, the obvious evil walrus boss, being very upset. And by the time Swifty gets back, he's like delivering that package. The walrus takes his pen, and he was told to keep the pen. So he sneaks into the facility, and he starts to knock over things, and then he hides, and the walrus goes on with his plan about drilling into the ice caps or whatever. So he returns back to his work, where the polar bear starts to get him into this party that they have planned for Swifty. Like, he did the job, so he's getting distracted by all of these compliments, and Jamie's there at the end, sort of anticipating once again, just sort of him to accept the hit her or whatever. So she's trying to get his attention. She does so initially, but then he gets like distracted by the party. So she starts to head out. She is very distraught. So Jamie walks out on Swifty, saying he left behind his life for something better, and that's a bad thing. And this is where the movie, to me, really starts to fall apart, in terms of, like, so this character, even though he's an asshole, he's sort of like, well, I wouldn't say asshole, I would say he's just sort of cocky, and I don't think that necessarily correlates to assholeness necessarily. It could, but I don't think it's a one-to-one correlation. Nonetheless, for her to get mad at him for wanting something better in his life, I just don't understand why that would be something bad. Like, this is the thing he wanted. Like, from the very get-go, you see it as the audience, and he kind of even talks about it to her, I think, to an extent. Nonetheless, Jamie gets gassed by the evil little bird creatures, and the polar bear meets up with Swifty, and we see that the snow is starting to melt. And Swifty starts to try to explain what's actually happening. And again, we have this other really abrupt, out of nowhere, like, what is the story actually doing right now sort of moment, where the polar bear actually says that Swifty has been stretching the truth to get ahead, and he doesn't listen to anything PB actually ever says. And it's like, come on, I know that Swifty is a bit of a cocky character, but you're not doing any favors by having all of your other characters still talk to him. Like, it goes like a step above. Like they treat him like I said that there wasn't a correlation to being an asshole necessarily, but they treat him like he was being an asshole, which again, I don't necessarily even see. Like, again, he was just trying to get a better position in his current job. I don't see how that is necessarily even a bad thing, but the movie treats it like as if it's a bad thing. And spoiler alert to real life, I'm not sure if the writers know this about real life, but people lie to get jobs. In fact, let me give you a little inside scoop as someone who's done a job interview and has been in little like class workshops with like people instructing you how to get a job. When people ask you what your weakness is, you don't tell them the truth in the necessarily you give them a weakness. Instead, you give them a different truth about a strength in replacement of already said truth of weakness. So you're sidestepping the actual truth. You're sidestepping the actual question of what your weakness is by inserting a different truth. That's how you get a job. According to professional like job, people. And that's a very like that that I was told that not very long ago. So it's probably still very much the case of like, oh, if someone asks you what your weakness is, instead of saying, an actual weakness, you say, oh, I get to I work really hard, and it's just like, ooh, it's so hard, or something like that. You kind of paint a good as a bad, if that makes any sense. So again, it's just really, really bizarre. These two moments really, really just come out of absolutely nowhere, and again, I don't feel like either of them are earned or justified. They just sort of happen. And I think one way to make that fulfill the requirements of like what has been happening, instead of the main character sort of narrating what he's been going through, is actually show the character doing things that would represent not listening, being a level up in cockiness of like, yeah, I'm the best of like whatever, or like, actually like show what you're talking about when characters are referring to these things, so you can go like, okay, so yeah, that character's grievances actually make some sort of logical sense and consistency within the film. That doesn't happen in this movie. They just come out of nowhere and just say, hey, you wanted this job, and you were stretching the truth, and you don't listen. It's like, where was that in the movie? I didn't see that, so you're just making stuff up, I'm assuming, or, Anyway, long tangent aside, getting back to the actual sequence of events. So PB goes back after being upset or whatever, and Swifty heads out to Jamie's locale to see where she went, and he doesn't find her. So he goes back to the Otters, and he's like, oh, something's happening. So that he gets them to go with him and they're introduced to the bad gas. It's literally called the bad gas. Bad being an acronym for elements that they use, which is causing global warming, as if you're trying to, represent the story of, like, oh, this character of, like, he's trying to get to a better position, and he's, like, lying to get a better position, or, like, he's cocky and he's super arrogant or whatever, and you can't even do that right, and now you're gonna introduce global warming as, like, oh no. It's like, you can't represent your first theme in the movie properly, and you're gonna tackle global warming. Okay, well, here we go. So Swifty and the other otters flee from the scene, and they get chased. And the walrus proceeds to check in with Jamie, and he tells her that she's gonna be forced to work on this little gadget, to drill into the snow or whatever. And she creates a failsafe in the process of doing it. So the boss, who the one Swifty works for, the character on top of a fox there. I think she's like an elk or something, or like a caribou or something. I don't know. Anyway, she says how she knew the bad walrus from before. So it goes into the backstory of the the walrus character, showing how he went through all of these innovations, and then the last innovation ended up being like, oh, it's introducing the bad gas, and like now he's like doing that, and he gets fired for it. So he wants to do all of this because his last experiment was, it would cause bad to other people. So he was fired, and he got mad over that. So anyways, and after that, we see PB, I think, Swifty and PB like reconcile at this point in time, and PB says, and I actually went, what? He says he is always there for Swifty, even though earlier in the movie he was yelling at Swifty to like be grounded or whatever. And it's like, what are you actually talking about? Where is this coming from? Like, another moment of just like a character says something, all of a sudden you're just like, when did this happen? What are you actually, you weren't there when you were yelling at him. Very clearly you were very upset. So anyways, Swifty charges with his little team that he's able to bring about together, and they get attacked by snow, and snow is very dangerous. I don't know, it's really stupid. So they meet up with the wolves, and they get like locked up or whatever. And then his heroes fail him, as if there weren't enough failed themes in this movie. We have the never meet your heroes because they will fail you theme in this, and it also just seems like, well, okay, they're old and tired, and they don't see like an option way out, and she's like, oh no, all of a sudden I'm all depressed and sad or whatever. Anyways, as I said, Jamie was tasked with finishing the drill. So the walrus guy says goodbye to her. She's then joining the remaining group. So Swifty talks to Jamie, and is under the impression of like, oh, you did this thing of like, you made all of this stuff, and I saw this note that was written to you, and you did all of this stuff to get appraisal. So Turns out Jamie was a hypocrite all along. Oops, that was her main flaw. She was a hypocrite. It's like, oh my god, wow. Jeez, what an asshole. Oh man. Anyway, Jamie now decides that she admits that she stayed there for him, to be with him. And everyone's like, oh, it doesn't feel earned at all, by the way. So Jamie gets out, is able to help the others get out, PB being the last among them. The birds, the little penguin things, fly in and try to move the switch. So the walrus moves his base into the town, and the bad minions are heading out so that he can start up his drill and stuff. All the while, the bird minions are attacking Swifty and his team with snow, which so Swifty takes off the majority of his clothes, except for the exception of his underwear, so that he can blend into the snow once again. And right before he heads out, Swifty kisses Jamie, so they end up together anyway. Because they had that one moment of like, oh, I understood, and she also said I was there for you. Childhood friends who argued that one time and then fell in love. It's like, okay, just rush through all of that nonsense. It's not like you need to develop your characters. You can just, they're in love now, okay? Anyway. The team moves in, Swifty and his team of heroes and heroines all of a sudden are moving in. The wolves come out and they get out of where they were, which it didn't show them at all, by the way, getting out, so it's a complete mystery to see how they got out and then how they are able to also get a machine to help out from out of nowhere and know where they were as well. So Swifty is able to get to the control panel, but the walrus guy is not having any of it. He tries to tackle him down. Swifty is able to wiggle his way out and stealth once again, and manages to take down the machine. But the walrus pins him down again, and the machine blows up with the two of them still on it. They get blown away by this explosion, and they land or whatever. So after that, the small birds decide that they're going to reveal to the walrus that they could talk all along, and that they decide to quit, and they fly off. Meanwhile, Jamie finds Swifty in the snow, and then he had this quirk about him being really upset that everyone kept calling him just a fox instead of a normal fox. He's just a fox, and then he actually just takes that for face value now. He's like, yeah, I'm just a fox, whatever. Okay, so we skip ahead to X amount of time, and then he becomes the co-manager of the package area as he narrates how everything has changed, how they have different animals and different sized mail packages for the animals to help them with their little job affair, and Jamie and Swifty hug it out at the end, buddy, lovers, etc., etc., and that is the end of the movie Arctic Dogs. Boy, does this movie just rush through everything, to the point of it being nonsensical in story, in terms of characters just suddenly get upset, characters suddenly feel oh, I'm not upset anymore, characters motivations just being oh, I was fired, okay, I'm gonna melt the ice caps and cause global warming even though I'm half walrus, so you know, that would probably affect me too, and then I'd be the hero, because then I would suddenly change or whatever. This movie is all over the place in terms of, like, just throwing things together, and, like, if they had stuck with one thing, I feel like this movie could have been fine, of, like, if they just stuck with him being the overconfident, cocky character who, like, reconciles that, like, he can have enough and then upgrade just enough and be a little bit more humble. Like, that alone could have just been the movie, but no, they throw in all this other stuff of, like, you know, he is a jerk, but we're not gonna show, like, that. You know, we saw him as a kid, and he seemed like a nice kid from what we were shown. So this whole him being this over cocky character, it just seems like the way it was represented is just like he just kind of wants to get a better job, and that's what's shown in the film, and that's what's very frustrating, is that, like, we're being told by this other character that he's a jerk, and what I'm saying is that no, he just wants to get a better job. How does that make a person a jerk? I'm not. That logic is very inconsistent. It doesn't follow through with what we are seeing in the flashback of him being a kid. You know, if you really wanted to push it, you know, you could have been like, he's the bully character, or like he's just even cocky as a kid. You know, maybe you don't have him, you know, strut his stuff even as a kid. You know, stuff like that. If you're really going to go down that route, you know, follow it. Don't just throw that into the movie and just expect people to go like, oh, okay. I'm going to give this movie a 2 out of 10. It's not great. There are too many elements that they try to throw into this movie without executing any of them well enough. You know, just from the baseline of character development, you throw that together and you just go, well, characters are just going to say what these characters are and not explore what that actually means or whatever. You know, you're going to throw various themes into the movie of, like, this character's, you know, not humble, even though contrary to what we see, never meet your heroes because they will be jerks. Global warming is bad. You know, we have these 3 different elements, these 3 very different, like, you can make a movie about each of these things, and they're all in this one movie, and none of them feel like they stick well at all. So yeah. That's my review of Arctic Dogs, and if you enjoyed it, then please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, make sure to check out those links in the description. One will head you over to my Discord server, the other to my Patreon page. Any donations are greatly appreciated. Until next time, everyone, bye-bye.